The alarm bells rang through the bridge of the HFY, raider ship Blood Fang. Captain Zextel's 4 eyes focused on the scanner display, his scaled fingers drumming against the command chair. After 30 years of piracy in the outer spiral, he knew a perfect target when he saw one. "Sir, we have a single ship on approach vector 77 Alpha," reported his second-in-command, a thin Valarian named Skix. "Energy signature is minimal. Hull design appears to be human origin." Zextel's mouth opened in what his species considered a smile, showing rows of sharp teeth. Humans, the newest species to join the galactic community, barely 200 years since first contact. Their technology was primitive compared to the ancient civilizations that ruled the galaxy. Their ships were slow, their weapons outdated, and their crews inexperienced in real combat. "What type of vessel?" Zextel asked, though he already suspected. The answer: cargo hauler, sir. The Resolute Dawn. Registry shows it's carrying mining equipment to the Tertius colonies. Perfect. Mining equipment meant valuable metals and rare elements. The kind of cargo that sold well on the black markets of the Rim worlds. Zextel had raided dozens of human ships over the past 5 years. They always surrendered quickly. Humans were weak, scared creatures who valued their lives more than their cargo. "How many escort ships?" he asked. "None, sir. She's running alone." Even better. A lone cargo ship in the dangerous outer spiral was practically begging to be robbed. Zextel wondered if humans would ever learn to travel in convoy like the other species did. Probably not. They were too arrogant, thinking their status as a protected developing species would keep them safe. "Signal the pack," Zextel ordered. All ships moved to intercept positions. Standard raid formation. The Blood Fang was the flagship of a 5-ship raiding pack. 2 fast attack vessels, 2 boarding ships, and his command cruiser. More than enough firepower to handle anything the humans might throw at them. The other ships began moving into position, spreading out to surround the human vessel. On the main screen, the Resolute Dawn grew larger as they approached. It was typical human design, boxy, functional, with no regard for the elegant curves preferred by older galactic civilizations. The hull was dark gray metal with obvious weld marks and repair patches. Definitely a working ship, not some fancy diplomatic vessel. "Range?" Zextel asked. 50,000 kilometers in closing, sir." "Any response from the target?" "They're hailing us, sir. Standard emergency frequency." Zextel laughed, a harsh sound that made several bridge crew members step back. "Put them through. Let's see how quickly they beg." The main screen flickered and showed the bridge of the human ship. A woman sat in the captain's chair, her dark hair pulled back in a simple knot. Her uniform was clean but worn. Her face was calm, showing no sign of fear. Behind her, Zextel could see other crew members at their stations. Humans mostly, but he spotted a few aliens as well. "This is Captain Sarah Chun of the merchant vessel Resolute Dawn," the woman said. Her voice was steady, professional. "You are conducting an illegal intercept in neutral space. Please identify yourselves and state your intentions." Zextel felt a moment of surprise. Most human captains started pleading or offering bribes immediately. This one was different. Still, it didn't matter. They all broke eventually. "I am Captain Zextel of the HFY Syndicate," he replied, letting his voice carry the full weight of his reputation. "Your ship and cargo now belong to us. Prepare to be boarded. Any resistance will result in the destruction of your vessel and the death of your crew." Captain Chun's expression didn't change. "I see. And if we surrender? Your crew will be transferred to escape pods and released at the nearest inhabited system. Your cargo becomes ours. It's a fair trade. Your lives for your goods." The human captain seemed to consider this for a moment. She looked around her. Bridge, as if consulting with her officers. Zexthil couldn't hear what they were saying, but he saw several nods and hand gestures. Finally, Chun looked back at the screen. "We need a few minutes to discuss this among the crew," she said. "Some of them are frightened. They need time to understand the situation." "You have 10 minutes, Zexthil replied. "After that, we begin shooting." The screen went dark. Zexthil turned to his crew, feeling satisfaction at how easily this was. "Going. Move to boarding positions. Prep the capture teams. This will be over soon." The 5 raider ships closed in on the Resolute Dawn. The human ship continued on its course, making no attempt to run or fight. Its engines maintained the same steady output. Its weapons remained powered down. Everything looked normal for a surrendering merchant vessel. "Sir," Skix reported, "the human ship is transmitting on several frequencies. Standard distress calls mostly. Emergency beacons, requests for assistance from any nearby vessels." "Let them," Zexthil said with amusement. "By the time help arrives, we'll be long gone with their cargo." As the minutes passed, Zexthil studied the human ship more carefully. The Resolute Dawn was larger than most cargo haulers, but that just meant more space for valuable goods. The hull showed signs of regular maintenance, which suggested the owners took good care of their investment. The engine configuration was standard human design, reliable but not particularly fast. "Time's up," Zexthil announced. "Hail them again." They. Screen activated, showing Captain Chun once more. She looked tired now, as if the weight of the situation was finally hitting her. "We've decided to surrender," she said quietly. "My crew doesn't want to die for a cargo hold full of mining equipment. We'll cooperate fully with your boarding procedures." "Wise choice," Zexthil replied. "Maintain your current course and speed. Prepare your crew for transfer to the emergency pods. Any attempt to resist or sabotage your ship will result in immediate execution." "Understood," Chun said. "We'll be ready for your boarding teams." The transmission ended. Zexthil felt the familiar rush of victory. Another successful raid, another profitable day. The human ship was now completely surrounded by his vessels, with nowhere to run even if they changed their minds. "Deploy boarding pods," he ordered. "Teams Alpha through Delta, standard seizure protocol. I want that ship secured in 30 minutes." The boarding pods launched from 2 of his ships, small armored vessels designed to attach directly to a target's hull and cut through with plasma torches. Each pod carried a squad of heavily armed pirates from various species. They had done this hundreds of times before. Zexthil watched the pods close the distance to the human ship. Everything was going perfectly. The Resolute Dawn maintained course and speed, showing no signs of resistance. Its crew was probably huddled together somewhere, waiting to be herded into escape pods. "Pods making contact with target hull," reported the boarding team leader. "Beginning cutting procedures now." On the tactical display, Zexthil could see the 5 boarding pods attached to different points along the human ship's hull. The plasma cutters were already at work, slicing through the outer armor to create entry points. In a few minutes, his teams would be inside, securing the bridge and cargo holds. "Sir," Skix said suddenly, "I'm detecting some unusual energy readings." "From the target vessel." "What kind of readings?" Zexthil asked, though he wasn't particularly concerned. Human ships often had strange energy signatures. Their technology was still developing. Power fluctuations throughout the ship, almost like they're reconfiguring something. Before Zexthil could respond, Captain Chun's face appeared on the screen again. But this time she wasn't calling to surrender or beg. She was smiling. It was a cold, dangerous smile that made Zexthil's blood run cold. "Captain Zexthil," she said calmly, "I have one word for you and your crews." She paused. her smile growing wider. Pandora. The moment Captain Chun spoke the word Pandora, everything changed. The resolute dawn began to transform before Zexthel's eyes. Panels along the hull slid open with mechanical precision, revealing rows of weapon ports that had been completely hidden moments before. The dull gray cargo ship suddenly bristled with railguns, plasma cannons, and missile tubes. What had looked like repair patches were actually camouflaged armor plating that now folded back to expose military-grade firepower. "Impossible," Zexthel whispered, staring at the tactical display as his ship's computers frantically updated their assessment of the human vessel. The Resolute Dawn wasn't a cargo hauler at all. It was a warship. A very well-disguised, very dangerous warship. "Sir?" Skix shouted from his station. "Energy readings are off the charts. That ship has enough firepower to destroy our entire pack." But Zexthel was more worried about his boarding teams. 5 pods full of his best pirates were now attached to the hull of what had revealed itself to be a military vessel. A trap. They had walked straight into a perfectly laid trap. "Alpha Team to command," crackled the voice of his boarding team leader over the comm. "We've breached the hull and are moving inside. This place is strange, sir. The corridors are too narrow, and there are blast doors everywhere." "Get out of there," Zexthel barked. "It's a trap. All teams abort and return to ships immediately." But it was already too late. On the human ship, Sergeant Marcus Webb crouched behind a makeshift barricade in Corridor 7. The big man's scarred face was calm as he watched his motion sensors. 30 years of military service had taught him patience. The aliens were coming, just as Captain Chun had predicted they would. "Contacts approaching from Section C and D," he whispered into his comm unit. 4 hostiles each group, armed with standard pirate gear. "Copy that, Marcus?" came Chun's voice. "Remember, we want some of them alive for questioning." "Understood, Captain. Non-lethal takedowns when possible." Webb smiled grimly. The pirates had no idea what they were walking into. The Resolute Dawn might look like a cargo ship on the outside, but inside it was a maze of defensive positions, hidden weapons, and tactical surprises. Every corridor could be sealed independently. Every room had multiple exit routes. The humans had spent months preparing for this moment. The first group of pirates rounded the corner, moving in a loose formation that would have been effective against scared civilians. Against trained soldiers, it was suicide. Webb waited until they were in the middle of the corridor, then pressed a button on his control pad. Hidden panels in the walls slid open, revealing automated defense turrets. But instead of deadly projectiles, they fired nets made of high-strength polymer fiber. The 4 pirates were tangled and brought down before they could even raise their weapons. Gas canisters dropped from the ceiling, releasing a fast-acting sedative that put them to sleep in seconds. "Section C secured," Webb reported. 4 prisoners, no casualties. Similar reports came in from around the ship as the other boarding teams were systematically captured or neutralized. The humans had turned their own vessel into a giant trap, using the aliens' expectations against them. The pirates expected to find frightened merchants. Instead, they found soldiers who knew their ship better than they knew their own names. Lieutenant Sarah Kim had positioned herself in the main cargo bay, which the pirates would certainly try to secure. She was a small woman, barely 5 feet tall, but she had earned her rank in the border wars, fighting against enemies twice her size. When the airlock cycled open and 6 pirates charged in, she was ready. The cargo bay looked normal enough. Rows of shipping containers, standard loading equipment, dim lighting. The pirates spread out to search for crew members and valuable goods. They never noticed the shipping containers were all empty, or that some of them weren't containers at all. Kim pressed her detonator. The fake containers exploded outward, not with deadly force, but with expanding foam that filled the entire bay in seconds. The pirates found themselves trapped in a substance that hardened around them like quick-setting concrete. They couldn't move, couldn't see, and could barely breathe through the emergency air filters built into the foam. "Cargo bay secured," Kim reported cheerfully. 6 more for the collection. Back on the bridge of the Bloodfang, Zexthul watched his carefully planned raid fall apart in real time. His boarding teams had gone silent one by one. The tactical display showed his pod still attached to the human ship, but there was no sign of his pirates inside. "Sir?" Skix reported with panic. In his voice, "The human ship is powering up weapons. Multiple target locks on all our vessels. Evasive maneuvers." Zexthul shouted, "All ships scatter." But the human ship was already moving. The Resolute Dawn accelerated with shocking speed, far faster than any cargo hauler should have been able to move. Its hidden engines revealed their true power as the disguised warship positioned itself to block the raiders' escape routes. The first volley of human weapons fire was precise and devastating. Railgun slugs tore through the armor of the nearest raider ship, targeting engines and weapon systems with surgical accuracy. The aliens weren't trying to destroy the pirate vessels. They were disabling them, leaving them helpless but alive. "Return fire," Zexthul ordered desperately. His ships opened up with everything they had. Plasma beams and missile salvos streaked toward the human vessel. But the Resolute Dawn moved like a dancer, twisting and rolling through space with impossible grace. Its point defense systems shot down incoming missiles, while its armor absorbed hits that should have crippled it. This wasn't how space combat was supposed to work. Ships were supposed to stand off at long range and exchange fire until one side's shields failed. They weren't supposed to charge straight into the enemy formation like some ancient warrior looking for hand-to-hand combat. But that's exactly what the humans were doing. The Resolute Dawn closed to knife-fighting range with Zexthul's command. "Ship." At this distance, every shot was a guaranteed hit. The human weapons began systematically dismantling the Bloodfang's combat systems. "Shields failing," Skix reported. "Engines at 30%. Weapons offline." On the main screen, Captain Chun's face appeared again. She was still calm, still professional, but there was something in her eyes that made Zexthul's blood run cold. It was the look of a predator that had finally cornered its prey. "Captain Zexthul," she said pleasantly. "I should probably introduce myself properly. I'm Captain Sarah Chun, commanding officer of the U's Resolute Dawn, Anti-Piracy Task Force. 7. You and your crews are under arrest for violation of Galactic Maritime Law, Section 47. Armed robbery in neutral space." "Anti-Piracy Task Force?" Zexthul repeated weakly. "That's right. We've been hunting your little group for 6 months now. Amazing how much information you can gather when you let yourselves be raided a few times. We know your patrol routes, your safe houses, your fence operations, and your crew rosters." The implications hit Zexthul like a physical blow. The other ships you raided ... were all decoys, every single one. We've been feeding you false targets and watching you take the bait. Did you really think it was coincidence that you kept finding lone human ships in convenient locations? Around the Bloodfang, the other raider ships were in similar condition. Dead in space, their crews alive, but their ships completely disabled. The humans had fought with a precision and ruthlessness that Zexthul had never encountered before. "How?" he asked. "How did you know we would attack this ship?" Captain Chun smiled that cold smile again. "Because we know how you think, Captain. You see humans as weak, easy targets. You assume our technology is primitive because it looks different from yours. You've never bothered to study our military history or our tactical doctrines." She leaned forward slightly. "That was your first mistake. Your second was assuming we fight alone. Before Zexthal could ask what she meant, the space around his disabled fleet began to shimmer. One by one, 3 more human ships decloaked from their hiding spots. A destroyer, a fast attack craft, and a support vessel. They had been there the entire time, waiting and watching. You see, Captain Sean continued, humans learned something important from our early encounters with galactic civilization. We learned that everyone underestimates us. Everyone assumes we're primitive, backwards, harmless. So we decided to use that against you. The support ship was already deploying capture shuttles to collect the disabled pirate vessels. There would be no escape, no last-minute rescue. The Kethver raiding pack had been completely and utterly defeated by what they thought was a single cargo ship. Welcome to human warfare, Captain Zexthal, Chun said. I hope you're ready to learn why attacking our ships is the worst mistake you could possibly make. In the detention bay of the Resolute Dawn, Captain Zexthal sat behind a force field barrier, trying to understand what had happened to his fleet. Through the transparent aluminum wall, he could see his captured crew members being processed by human security teams. They were being treated well, given medical attention, food, and water, but they were definitely prisoners. The door opened and Captain Chun entered, carrying a data pad and 2 cups of something that smelled like coffee. She set 1 cup down, where Zexthal could reach it through the security slot. It's not poisoned, she said, settling into a chair across from him. Though I understand if you don't trust me. Zexthal ignored the coffee. What do you want, human? Information. And to satisfy your curiosity about how we beat you so easily. Chun took a sip from her cup. You keep looking at me like I'm some kind of monster, like what we did was impossible. It was impossible, Zexthal said bitterly. No one fights the way you humans fight. It's unnatural. Chun laughed softly. Unnatural? Captain, you've been raiding ships for 30 years. Haven't you ever wondered why human crews are different from everyone else? You surrender more quickly. You value individual lives over profit. Sometimes, yes, but not when it matters. Chun leaned forward. Tell me, in all those raids you've conducted, how many times have you fought a military vessel? Zexthal thought about it. Military ships don't travel alone. They're too well defended, too organized. We stick to merchants and civilians. Exactly. You prey on the weak because it's profitable and safe. But you've never actually fought a war, have you? Not a real war. The pirate captain felt a chill run down his spine. What do you mean? I mean, you fight like a businessman, not a soldier. You calculate risks and profits. You retreat when the odds turn against you. You treat combat like a transaction. Chun's voice became harder. Humans don't fight transactions, Captain. Humans fight wars. The door opened again, and Chief Engineer Marcus Webb entered. The big man nodded to Chun and activated a holographic display that showed the recent battle from multiple angles. The captain asked me to explain our tactics, Webb said in his gravelly voice. Might help you understand what happened. The hologram showed the moment when the Resolute Dawn revealed its true nature. Zexthal watched his own ships scatter in panic as the human vessel transformed from prey to predator. First lesson, Webb said, pointing to the display. Humans don't fight fair. We fight to win. While your species developed honor codes and rules of engagement, we developed deception and surprise. The display shifted to show the interior battles. Zexthal saw his boarding teams being systematically captured by defenders, who seemed to know exactly where they would go and what they would do. Second lesson, Webb continued. Humans think like pack hunters. We don't just plan for the attack. We plan for the counterattack, the retreat, the pursuit, and everything that comes after. Every human on this ship knew their role in the operation. But How did you know we would attack this specific ship? Zexthil demanded. Chun smiled grimly. Because we've been studying you for months. Every raid you've conducted in human space, every pattern in your behavior, every tactical decision you've made. We built a psychological profile of your entire operation. She gestured to the hologram, which now showed a map of the outer spiral with dozens of marked locations. You always attack lone ships. You prefer cargo haulers to passenger vessels. You avoid military patrols. You operate in specific sectors where response times are slow. You follow the same basic pattern every time. All pirates follow patterns, Zexthil protested. Yes, but most species don't have the patience to map those patterns across months of observation. They react to individual incidents. Humans play the long game. Webb laughed, a sound like grinding metal. Tell him about the merchant cruise, Captain. Ah. Yes. Chun's expression became almost predatory. Those ships you raided over the past year? The ones that surrendered so easily? Half of them were crewed by retired military personnel. Volunteers who let themselves be captured so they could study your boarding procedures, your equipment, your crew composition. Zexthil felt sick. You used your own people as bait. They volunteered, Chun said simply, because they understood the mission. Every human you robbed, every crew member you put in an escape pod, every cargo container you stole, it all went into our database. We learned how you think, how you operate, how you make decisions. The hologram shifted again, showing detailed schematics of Kethfer ships and equipment. Information that should have been impossible for outsiders to obtain. Third lesson, Webb said. Humans share information. Not just with our military, but with everyone. Those merchant captains you robbed, they talked to other merchant captains. The crew members you released, they were debriefed by our intelligence services. Within days of every raid, we knew exactly what weapons you used, what your ships looked like inside, what languages your crew spoke. But that's... Zexthil struggled to find the words. That's not how it works. Merchants don't work with military. Civilians don't spy for governments. Other species don't work that way. Shun agreed. But humans do. When you attack one of us, you attack all of us. That's something your people never understood. The display changed to show the space battle itself. Zexthil watched his ships firing at the Resolute Dawn, their shots going wide as the human vessel moved with impossible agility. Your ships fight like individuals, Webb observed. Each captain making their own decisions, following their own tactics. Look at your formation. It's loose, disorganized. Each ship is trying to protect itself first. The hologram highlighted the human ships as they decloaked and moved into position. Their formation was tight, coordinated, with each vessel supporting the others. Humans fight like a single organism, Chun explained. Every ship captain knows what the others will do before they do it. We train together, plan together, think together. When you fight one human ship, you're fighting all of them. That's impossible, Zexthil said weakly. Ships can't coordinate that precisely in real-time combat. They can if the crews trust each other completely, Webb replied. If they've trained together for years. If they're willing to take risks that other species consider suicidal. The display showed the moment when the Resolute Dawn charged directly into the pirate formation, exposing itself to massive return fire. Any rational commander would have stayed at long range and traded shots safely. Fourth lesson, Chun said quietly. Humans don't calculate acceptable losses the same way other species do. You retreat when the odds are against you. We advance when the odds are against us. You're insane, Zexthil whispered. No, we're committed. There's a difference. Chun stood up and walked to the holographic display. Every species in the galaxy has been shaped by evolution, Captain. Some evolved to be strong, some to be smart, some to be fast. Humans evolved to be stubborn. She gestured to the battle replay. Look at your crew's behavior when the fight started going badly. Half of them panicked. The other half started looking for escape routes. That's normal, rational behavior for most species. The display focused on the human crew during the battle. They looked tense, focused, but not panicked. Even when enemy fire was hitting their ship, they stayed at their posts and followed orders. Humans don't panic the same way, Webb explained. We get angry. And angry humans are the most dangerous things in the galaxy. But why? Zextal asked desperately. Why fight so hard for a cargo ship? Why risk your lives for mining equipment? Chun looked at him with something almost like pity. You still don't get it, do you? This was never about the cargo, Captain. This was about sending a message. She walked back to her chair and sat down. Every pirate crew in this sector is going to hear about what happened here. They're going to learn that human ships aren't easy targets anymore. They're going to understand that attacking us means war, not just robbery. One battle doesn't change anything, Zextal said, but his voice lacked conviction. One battle changes everything, Shen replied. Because humans don't fight one battle at a time, we fight campaigns. We fight entire wars with a single engagement. Webb activated another display, this one showing a galactic map with dozens of red dots scattered across multiple star systems. While we were hunting your little fleet, he said with satisfaction, other human task forces were tracking down the rest of the Kethfer Syndicate. Your supply bases, your safe houses, your business partners. Zextal stared at the map in horror. Every red dot represented a location his organization used for operations. The humans had found them all. Fifth lesson, Chun said softly. Humans don't just win battles. We eliminate threats completely. By the time you're released from prison, Captain, the Kethfer Syndicate will be a footnote in history. She stood up to leave, then paused at the door. You asked why we fight so differently from other species. The answer is simple, because we have to. Every other species in the galaxy is stronger than us, or smarter than us, or more advanced than us. The only way humanity survives is by being more committed than anyone else. As the door closed behind her, Zextal sat in his cell and finally understood what he had awakened. The humans weren't just another species to be preyed upon. They were apex predators disguised as herbivores, and they had been hunting him from the moment 3 days after the capture of the Kethfer raiding fleet, Commander Elena Vasquez sat in the communication center of Naval Station Kepler, watching data streams flow across dozens of monitors. As head of the Human Anti-Piracy Coordination Network, she had been waiting for this moment for over a year. Signal strength is good on all channels, reported Lieutenant Torres from his console. We have confirmed contact with 47 human vessels, 12 colonial governments, and 8 allied species naval commands. Elena nodded, feeling the familiar thrill of a plan coming together. The capture of Zextal's fleet had been just the beginning. Now came the real operation, a systematic dismantling of the largest pirate organization in the outer spiral. Activate the beacon, she ordered. Across human space, a coded signal went out on frequencies that most galactic civilizations didn't even know existed. To anyone monitoring communications, it looked like routine commercial traffic shipping. Schedules, weather reports, commodity prices. But hidden in the data streams were coordinates, timing codes, and target assignments that had been planned for months. Captain Maria Santos received the signal aboard her cargo hauler, Lucky Strike, while docked at Vega Station. She was loading supplies for the mining colonies when her ship's computer chimed softly. To any observer, she was checking a routine message from her company headquarters. In reality, she was receiving orders that would change the balance of power in 3-star systems. Santos had been a commander in the colonial navy for 15 years before retiring to become a merchant captain. Like many veterans, she stayed in touch with old colleagues and occasionally did favors for human intelligence services. What made her valuable wasn't just her military experience. It was her network of contacts throughout the commercial shipping industry. "Jimmy," she called to her first officer, a young man who looked like a typical cargo handler. "Break out the special equipment. It's time for that job we discussed." Jimmy Chun smiled and headed for the cargo bay. The Lucky Strike carried legitimate mining supplies, but hidden in sealed containers were surveillance drones, communication jammers, and other equipment that would help map Kethfer safe houses. Like dozens of other merchant vessels, Santos had been gathering intelligence on pirate operations for months. Meanwhile, on the agricultural world of New Brisbane, Farmer Jack Morrison was having his morning coffee when his personal communicator buzzed. The message looked like a routine weather update, but Morrison had learned to read the hidden codes during his 20 years as a Marine. He finished his coffee, kissed his wife goodbye, and headed to the barn where he kept his farming equipment. The equipment included a high-powered sensor array disguised as a grain silo, capable of tracking ship movements across half the system. Morrison had been monitoring pirate traffic for the past year, dutifully reporting every suspicious vessel that passed through New Brisbane's sensor range. Today, his data would help coordinate the largest anti-piracy operation in galactic history. The network extended far beyond military veterans. Dr. Sarah Kim, a xenobiologist studying coral formations on the ocean world of Tethys, interrupted her research to decode a message hidden in a scientific journal submission. The message contained genetic profiles of several alien species known to work with the Kethfer Syndicate. Her job was to identify any pirates who might try to hide among refugee populations. Merchant Captain David Park was delivering medical supplies to a remote research station when he received his orders. Park had never served in the military, but his sister had been killed in a pirate raid 5 years earlier. He volunteered to work with Human Intelligence Services, using his medical transport as cover to visit systems where military ships couldn't go legally. His cargo hold contained medical scanners that doubled as reconnaissance equipment. Even the tourists were involved. Rebecca Thompson, a travel writer visiting the luxury resort world of Paradise Prime, received her assignment through a travel advisory update. Her job was to identify Kethfer money laundering operations disguised as legitimate businesses. As a journalist, she could ask questions and take pictures without arousing suspicion. The coordination center at Naval Station Kepler tracked all these assets in real time. Elena Vasquez watched as status reports flowed in from across known space. Human operatives, both military and civilian, were moving into position for simultaneous strikes against Kethfer operations. "How many confirmed targets?" she asked Torres. 17 major installations, 34 supply caches, and 52 business fronts across 12 star systems, he replied. "We also have positive identification on 43 Kethfer vessels, currently in port at various locations." Elena smiled grimly. The Kethfer Syndicate thought they were fighting one human task force. They had no idea they were facing the entire Human Intelligence Network, a web of connections that spanned half the galaxy and included everyone from retired admirals to small-town farmers. "What about our allied species?" she asked. "The Centaurian Navy has 8 ships in position. The Vegan Defense Force is contributing 12 vessels. The Altarian Peacekeepers are providing ground support teams." Elena nodded. Human diplomats had been working for months to coordinate this operation, sharing intelligence with friendly governments and building a coalition against piracy. What made it possible was humanity's reputation for reliability. When humans said they would do something, other species believed them. The first strike came at 14:30 Standard Time. Captain Santos and her cargo hauler, appeared at the edge of the Rigel system, where intelligence indicated a major Kethver supply depot. The depot was built into an asteroid, disguised as a mining operation. It had been operating for over 10 years without detection. Santos deployed her surveillance drones and began a detailed scan of the facility. Within minutes, she had confirmed the presence of stolen goods, illegal weapons, and several wanted criminals. She transmitted the data to a Centaurian patrol cruiser waiting in hyperspace. Target confirmed, she reported. Initiating surrender protocols. The Lucky Strike broadcast a standard distress signal, claiming engine failure. As expected, the pirates launched small craft to investigate and rob the apparently helpless cargo ship. The moment they were clear of the asteroid base, the Centaurian cruiser dropped out of hyperspace and disabled them with precision ion cannon fire. Similar operations were taking place across the galaxy. On Vega 7, Dr. Kim's genetic profiles helped security forces identify 3 Kethver operatives hiding among migrant workers. On Paradise Prime, Rebecca Thompson's investigations led to the arrest of a casino owner who had been washing stolen credits for years. The beauty of the human network was its flexibility. Unlike traditional military operations, which required rigid command structures and formal authorization, the human system relied on individual initiative and trust. Each operative made their own tactical decisions based on local conditions, but all worked toward the same strategic goal. Farmer Morrison detected a convoy of suspicious ships passing through his system and alerted a vegan patrol fleet. Medical. Transport Captain Park used his legitimate access to a restricted research facility to plant surveillance equipment near a suspected pirate meeting site. Even travel writer Tonson found ways to contribute, using her journalist credentials to interview people who had information about Kethver operations. The pirates never saw it coming. They were used to fighting governments and military organizations with predictable procedures and limited resources. They had no experience dealing with an enemy that included farmers, doctors, journalists, and merchants, all working together without formal command structure. Elena watched the reports flow in from across the galaxy. Strike after strike, capture. After capture, the Kethver Syndicate's network was being systematically destroyed. Within 6 hours, over 60% of their known assets had been seized or neutralized. Commander, Torres said excitedly, we're getting reports from the Arcturus system. The Kethver Leadership Council was meeting at their hidden headquarters. Local human assets provided targeting data for a joint strike by human and Altarian forces. Elena leaned forward. Results? 17 high-ranking Kethver commanders captured, including their overall leader. No casualties on our side. The Arcturus operation had been particularly complex. A human mining engineer named Robert Chun had spent 3 months working at an asteroid mining facility that was actually the entrance to the Kethver headquarters. Chun had used his access to map the entire complex and identify security weaknesses. When the assault began, he had disabled the emergency lockdown systems from inside DOT. As the day continued, the scope of the operation became clear. The humans hadn't just attacked one pirate fleet. They had declared war on organized piracy itself. Using intelligence gathered over months by hundreds of operatives, they had struck at every aspect of the Kethver organization simultaneously. Status report, Elena requested as the sun set over Naval Station Kepler. 93% of known Kethver assets neutralized or captured, Torres replied. Estimated financial damage to their organization complete. Remaining operational capacity negligible. Elena allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. The Kethver Syndicate. 6 months after the destruction of the Kethver Syndicate, Ambassador Thane Keller of the Galactic Commerce Guild stood before the emergency session of the Outer Spiral Security Council. The amphitheater was packed with representatives from dozens of species, all gathered to discuss what many were calling the human problem. "The statistics are undeniable," Keller said, his crystalline voice echoing through the chamber. "Piracy in human-controlled space has dropped by 89%. Trade route security has increased by 300%. Insurance costs for shipping through human territories have fallen to the lowest levels in recorded history." A murmur ran through the assembled delegates. These were remarkable numbers by any standard, but they came with implications that made many species uncomfortable. "However," Keller continued, "these improvements have come at a cost that we must consider carefully. The humans have fundamentally changed how security operations are conducted in civilized space. They have ignored traditional protocols, violated sovereignty agreements, and demonstrated a level of coordination that some find ... concerning." In the human delegation section, Admiral Janet Harrison sat quietly, listening to the debate that had been inevitable from the moment Operation Pandora succeeded. As commander of human space forces, she had expected this political backlash. Other species were always uncomfortable when humans proved more effective than expected. The Centaurian Republic wishes to voice its strong support for human anti-piracy efforts, announced Ambassador Vex, rising from his seat. "Our shipping losses in joint patrol zones have decreased by 74%. Human tactical doctrine has proven highly effective." "Effective, yes," replied Ambassador Senth of the Vegan Confederacy, "but also unprecedented. No single species has ever coordinated intelligence assets across such a wide area. The humans have created a network that spans dozens of star systems, involving both military and civilian personnel." Admiral Harrison finally stood to address the council. "If I may respond to these concerns," she said formally, "the human government has acted within all applicable laws and treaties. We have shared intelligence with allied species and coordinated our operations through proper diplomatic channels." "But you have also armed civilian vessels," accused Delegate. Morax of the Traders Collective. "You have used merchant ships as intelligence platforms. You have turned ordinary citizens into spies and soldiers." Harrison smiled slightly. "We have used the resources available to us, Delegate, just as every species does when facing threats to their security. No other species maintains such extensive civilian involvement in military operations," Morax insisted. "It is ... unnatural." "Unnatural?" Harrison repeated. "Or simply effective?" The debate that followed lasted for hours, but Harrison had heard all the arguments before. Other species were uncomfortable with humanity's approach to warfare because it didn't fit their traditional concepts of how conflicts should be conducted. They preferred clear boundaries between military and civilian, between government and private sector, between war and peace. Humans had no such boundaries. 2 weeks later, Harrison found herself in a very different setting, the maximum security prison on Titan Station, sitting across from former pirate Captain Zexthal. The alien looked older, his scales duller than they had been during his capture. Prison life had not been kind to him. "You wanted to see me," Harrison said without preamble. "Why?" Zexthal stared at her for a long moment before speaking. "I've been thinking about our conversation with Captain Chun, about why humans fight differently than other species. And I think I understand now. It's not just about tactics or technology. It's about what you believe war is for." Harrison leaned back in her chair. "Explain." "Most species fight to achieve specific objectives," Zexthal said slowly. "Territory, resources, political goals. When those objectives are met or become impossible to achieve, the fighting stops. Both sides calculate costs and benefits and decide when to quit." "That's logical," Harrison agreed. "But humans don't fight for objectives. You fight for principles. When someone attacks you, it's not just a tactical problem to be solved. It's a moral issue that demands resolution." Harrison said nothing, waiting for him to continue. The Kethver Syndicate raided human ships for profit. Zexthul went on. We calculated risks and rewards. When the risks became too high, we planned to find easier targets. But you didn't see it as a business transaction. You saw it as an act of war. Because it was an act of war, Harrison replied quietly. Every time you attacked a human ship, you declared war on humanity. You just didn't realize it. Zexthul nodded slowly. And humans fight wars to win them completely. Not to gain advantage or negotiate better terms, but to eliminate the threat entirely. Now you're beginning to understand. But why? Zexthul asked desperately. Why not just increase your security and accept some losses as the cost of doing business? Why mobilize entire populations for what most species would consider a minor security problem? Harrison was quiet for a long moment, considering her answer. Because we can't afford to lose, Captain. Every other species in the galaxy has advantages over us. You're stronger, or faster, or more technologically advanced, or have larger populations. The only advantage humans have is our refusal to accept defeat. She stood to leave, then paused. You asked Captain Shun why we fight so hard for a cargo ship full of mining equipment. The answer is simple. Because if we don't fight hard for everything, we won't survive to fight for anything. As Harrison left the prison, Zexthul sat in his cell and contemplated the true scope of his miscalculation. He had thought he was robbing merchant ships. In reality, he had declared war on a species that treated every conflict as a fight for survival. The effects of Operation Pandora continued to ripple through the galaxy. Within a year, piracy in the Outer Spiral had declined by over 90%. Criminal organizations that had operated for decades simply vanished, their leadership dead or imprisoned, their assets seized by coordinated law enforcement efforts. But the real change was psychological. Throughout the galaxy, criminal organizations began avoiding human space entirely. Ships flying human flags were left alone, even when they appeared vulnerable. Space stations with human security contracts saw their crime rates plummet. The message was clear. Humans didn't just fight back when attacked. They eliminated threats completely and permanently. Other species began studying human military doctrine, trying to understand how such a young civilization had developed such effective tactics. Military academies added courses on human warfare theory to their curricula. Alliance staff colleges invited human instructors to teach coordination and intelligence operations. But they never quite grasped the essential truth that Zexthul had finally understood in his prison cell. For humans, there was no distinction between individual survival and species survival. An attack on one human ship was perceived as an attack on all of humanity, requiring a response proportional not to the immediate damage, but to the existential threat represented. 5 years after the destruction of the Kethver Syndicate, Ambassador Harrison addressed the same Galactic Security Council that had questioned human methods. The statistics speak for themselves, she said, displaying charts that showed crime rates across human space. Piracy is down 96%. Smuggling operations have been reduced by 87%. Terrorist incidents have dropped to near zero. She paused, looking around the amphitheater at delegates who had once criticized human tactics. More importantly, these improvements have spread beyond human space. Our allied species have seen similar reductions in criminal activity. Our joint patrol programs have been adopted by 12 different governments. The coordination networks we developed are now being used for disaster relief, medical emergencies, and scientific research. The applause was polite, but genuine. Even former critics had to admit that human methods worked. However, Harrison continued, I want to address the concerns that some of you have raised about human military doctrine. You worry that our approach to security is too aggressive, too comprehensive, Human. She smiled slightly. You're right to be concerned. Because the galaxy has learned something important from the Kethver incident. Attacking a human ship isn't just robbery. It's a declaration of war against a species that treats every war as a fight for survival. The amphitheater was completely silent now. We didn't choose to be the galaxy's enforcers, Harrison said quietly. We became enforcers because someone had to be, and no one else was willing to pay the price. Every time you choose not to respond to aggression, every time you calculate that the costs outweigh the benefits, every time you negotiate with criminals and terrorists, you make the galaxy a little less safe for everyone. She gathered her notes and prepared to leave. Humans fight differently because we have to. Because we learned early that in a galaxy full of species stronger and more advanced than us, our only option is to be more committed than anyone else. As she walked toward the exit, Harrison delivered her final message to the assembled delegates. So, yes, attacking a human ship is their greatest miscalculation. Not because we're the strongest, or the smartest, or the most advanced, but because we're the only species that treats every attack as if the survival of